Hey everyone, this is Chris, and today we are going to talk about the new firmware for the Hubsan Zino. That is the 1.0.48, the newest firmware release. It's a big package because it's for the first time they introduced the update for the new transmitter, which we'll talk about. Not new transmitter, new firmware for the transmitter, which we'll talk about. So we have 1.0.48 on this now, and I've only done 4 batteries with it. I ran 4 full batteries to depletion, and I'm happy enough to just kind of give a little talk about it right now without going any further into flight testing or anything like that. And also, I just want to let you know that hell has not frozen over. I am wearing a Hubsan Zino, or a Hubsan shirt again, and I used to always wear different Hubsan shirts when I did my videos on anything Hubsan, and that all ended with the Zino, and that was because around that time I announced that I was no longer working with Hubsan as far as doing any type of testing or anything like that. The Zino is what ended it all. And just to recap that, I was never bashing Hubsan. I never had an axe to grind. Stepping away from testing, if you ever did anything with a company where you're testing all their stuff, and in my case it was firmware, it was hardware, it was new products. People think that's great, you get free products and stuff like that. It's not, because usually when you're testing something new, it's just a headache. You're just reporting things that aren't being taken care of, and that's what happened with the Zino. I was not happy with the fact that what I thought was simple fixes, and these are all the things that I reported are things that people saw, the drop in altitude and stuff like that. These were things I reported, and they didn't get fixed. So those things that I thought were simple to repair or fix apparently weren't, because here we are 3 months later with 1.0.48, and it's just now getting fixed. So they really had a hard time getting there, but they're there now. And this is the package that I think that I would have been happy with, and where I had hoped it to be when they released it before Christmas in November. So that was my whole thing with that Hubsan. It never was an axe to grind. It never was me just wanting to bash them as a company or bash this product. I've made it clear from the start that I want this to be good. And with this update, they've made improvement. That's all I ever wanted to see. Show me improvement. And for me, it's flight control, not camera. So they focused first on the camera, and that delayed us getting a good flight control. But now I'm happy. We're there. I can say I recommend this quad, and I recommend this update. I only recommend this quad on this firmware. Again, 4.6 was not terrible, but it still had the issues other than the drop on auto takeoff. But with this package we have now, some pretty significant issues were taken care of, and mainly, at least with my personal use and experience with my device and my area, I'm not getting the disconnects. I'm not getting the drop when I turn left, or the raise in altitude when I turn right. In the video I'm going to show you, you're only going to see me get a drop out of this thing twice. And my flight conditions were windy. It was on average, I think it was like 15-mile-an-hour winds. Excuse me, 15-mile-an-hour winds, which aren't terrible, but the wind gusts were over 30 miles an hour, and they were pretty consistent. They weren't just occasional wind gusts. I was fighting that wind a lot. And it really wasn't a fight, so I was impressed. I was very happy with how it performed in the wind. So the other thing I did was I flew it all around my neighborhood in Wi-Fi conditions, high interference type conditions where I would get a lot of disconnects, and I didn't get one single disconnect on 4 batteries. I flew it directly overhead, and this is something that I thought they would never be able to fix, and just based on the positioning of the antennas, I thought that I would always get disconnects overhead, but I yet to have one on this new firmware. So there are some good improvements there. They did a full package here, so there's no problems with the camera as far as getting any color flash or anything like that. I've never really focused on the camera. My important thing is flight control. So you'll see in the video the way I tested it. It looks crazy. It looks like just some crazy flying, and definitely doesn't look professional because all I'm doing is constantly taking turns. And when you see it from the FPV, it looks like I'm just doing real tight small turns, but then when you see it from my DJI Osmo, you'll see that I was taking some very wide turns. I did also take some tighter turns, and I was not losing altitude. I was only able to lose altitude in two different things, different situations, which you'll see in the video. And again, if that's all I get, I'm happy with that. And happy not having disconnects. Those were the two big issues with me. So hopefully what I'm reporting is the same thing you're going to experience, or the same thing that you guys are experiencing with your Zino now if you made the update. If anything I show in mine isn't something or is something that you are experiencing, leave a comment below. Share your experience with the update. I know some of you are having problems and you're stuck here. And when you go to do the jumper and you do the update for the transmitter, it's not taking. Everybody's well aware of that. There are a handful that I know of that are having an issue there. I don't know exactly what the problem is there. Without having it in my hands and doing it myself, I couldn't say. I have tried to help people, and Hubsan, I think, is working with them, so I don't really know what's going on there. As for that, before we get to the video, you've got this jumper type thing where you have to jump the pins to do your update, and a lot of people think that's crazy, but that's just the way you have to do it, and it makes sense for this type of update. So it's not the best way to do it, but it's not terribly hard. If you look at the video I made where I just used something as simple as tin foil, it works perfectly fine, and the update went through without a problem. The only problem I had was the cable of choice. So I switched that cable, update took, and it's been fine. So in the video you're going to see like I said, the things that are fixed, the things that I have a problem with still, and the last thing I want to point out is, to me, the only downfall with the Zino at this point is this controller. This controller to me is just toy grade. I don't like it. I don't have them on now, but I do have some little stick extensions that I added. Some people like the extensions and it works well for them. I don't care for either. To me, it's just way too sensitive. If I take the Zino and say I want to come in down low altitude and I want to try to keep it nice and locked in, it's just not easy. It's kind of wobbly and jerky. It's very, I guess, jerky, quirky, whatever is. I guess that's the best way to put it. It's just not. It's not smooth and fluid. I can take a 501. I'm not going to use anything like a DJI Mavic or anything like that as an example. I can take a 501 and I can be at low altitude and I can kind of lock in much easier on what I want. And you're going to see with the high wind, my Osmo got knocked over to the ground, and I flew down low to it and I tried to kind of lock in on it, and you'll see I was kind of all over the place. Now I did have some wind, but even without the wind, that's the characteristics you get with this. And I don't know if one of the problems I've had that I'm showing in the video is the crab walk. I don't know if that is due to this controller or if it is a firmware issue. I don't know. All I know is I don't like this. To me, this is toy grade. And hopefully they come out with an advanced version of this transmitter. And if you look at price point, and say, well, you get what you pay for, I think they could have done better still. You look at the FIMI X8. At the time that it came out on pre-sale, it's the same price, almost exact same price as what you guys were paying for this Zino early on. So there's not a big difference in price there, and you look at the controller that you get with the FIMI X8, and I should have had that handy. I wasn't really going to compare this with the FIMI, but you look at that controller and you have much more control and command, but not only that, the sticks are so much better compared to the Zino. So right now I am happy with the Zino. I hate these props. I'm happy with the Zino and on the current firmware package, but I'm still just not happy with this transmitter. And the only thing I can say is, as you see this get better and the flight control is more stable, I think people are going to start to agree more and more that, you know, once you do have the better stable flight control, then this is going to start getting some attention, and to where, hey, I don't like this controller. That's just my prediction. I think people may agree that, well, people will, but I think a lot of people will agree that as this improves, you're really going to notice just how crappy the toggles, the gimbal toggles, sticks, whatever you want to call them, are with the controller. So before, for me, this wasn't flying great, so I didn't put much focus on the controller. But as this is getting better, this stands out as toy grade to me. That's all I can say about it. And again, I'm not bashing Hubsan. I just don't like the controller. That's it. So watch the video, and like I said, it's going to be something where you're like, what the heck is going on here? All he's doing is taking a bunch of turns. All I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get it to lose altitude. I'm trying to get disconnects. I'm flying in heavy wind, and I'm flying in a very high Wi-Fi environment. I'm flying all over top of my neighborhood. I know people frown on that. I'm also flying in a no-fly zone. Because I have a hospital nearby with a helipad, but I'm at a level where no helicopter ever flies in my neighborhood. They're always very high above my neighborhood. So shame, shame, shame on me. But I wanted to do it in an environment like that because that's where I would fly and get a lot of disconnects. And like I said, I got 0 disconnects and had no issues. And not only that, my whole neighborhood knows I fly my drones, and if they ever find one on top of their car, house, or in their yard or swimming pool, they know where to come. So that's between me and my neighborhood. So that's it. Go ahead and watch the video, and hopefully you'll see it's not just crazy flying. It does show that it does not drop on left-hand turns. It does not increase on right-hand turns. It only dropped 2 times. And then your auto takeoff is still good. What it's going to show you is it's going to show you some other issues. Nothing really bad. Nothing that's keeping me from flying it from here on out or recommending it. So watch the video, and hopefully it helps. And I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks. Take care. All right here, I just wanted to show my current flight conditions. Not perfect for the Zino normally, but I was actually impressed this time. It did very well. And here's the auto takeoff. And as you see, it barely dropped. It's really not even significant in the video itself. So that's improved greatly. And now we're going to raise an altitude and just see how it holds there. And as you see there, it did drop. I did find that if I wait a little bit, then bring it up into a higher altitude, that once I bring it up, it does hold better. Here I'm going to do a left turn, and I lose my altitude right here. And then slow down and raise it back up. That's the only time, other than one other time you'll see in the video, that I got the altitude drop. So the rest of this just looks like crazy flying. Just doing a bunch of circles is all I'm doing. They look like very short, tight circles, but later on you'll see from the camera view of my DJI Osmo, They're actually pretty wide turns. And all I'm trying to do is get it to lose altitude in turns, and based on where I'm flying, get some disconnect. So I was only able during the time I flew like this to get one drop in altitude, and not one time did I get a disconnect. So that is a big improvement. Right here I lose my altitude, but that was a real tight turn and I let off on the throttle, so that doesn't count. But normally flying close to the driveway overhead, this is where I get my disconnects. So far I have not had any disconnects doing this in this flight here. I flew 4 batteries just doing nothing but flying bizarre like I am right here or in this video, and definitely there is improvement in this firmware. So right here you'll see I'm going to lower down a little bit. This is where I'm just seeing if I get a disconnect, but you're going to see a gust of wind push it back up. Right here. Just kind of gave it a good little push. Right at that time I felt a gust of wind down below. But prior to that, the reason I had brought it over here to the trees was we had some real big gusts that actually knocked over my DJI camera that was on a tripod. So here I'm just brought it down low, waiting for some of the gusts to kick down, and figured I would try the sensitivity, get close to the ground and try to aim in on the Osmo that fell down on the ground. And as you see, it's the typical sensitivity of these sticks. It just, you cannot hover down like this and try to really zoom in on a location spot and hold it real well. It's just very jittery. That's the one thing that I think is still a downfall for this, is the controller itself. So there you see the DJI Osmo laying on the ground, which it actually survived without a scratch. And then from here, mainly what I'm trying to show is I get that crab walk to the right, and I'm going to show a screenshot later from my device that will show you that I had my stick centered and still getting that crab walk to the right. Had nothing to do with wind because it was always to the right no matter what direction I would fly in. But at some point on here I'll be flying with the camera angled down more, and that's where you'll see it. It's very significant. So we're going to bring it up here, and then eventually I'll tilt the camera down, and then I'll fly what I'm trying to do in a nice straight line, but you'll see how significant the crab walk to the right is in my case. Now, one thing I do notice is, everybody else reports completely different stuff. Some people say theirs goes to the left, some people say theirs fly perfectly straight, some are losing altitude while they're flying straight. So the characteristics of the Zino really differ between users. And if you watch other people's videos, you can see they say they're very happy with it, everything's fine, but then if you watch the videos closely, you will see crab walks in a lot of these videos. So right here I'm lined up with my driveway, and I'm off to the right up the hill. So that shows it pretty significant, and I'm going to turn around and line up with the driveway again, and from my view down below, it was lined directly pointing straight at me, and when I went forward with the stick, it did not go straight. So right here I'm just kind of squaring up to the driveway. I'm pointing right directly at myself down on the ground, and it goes to a hard right. So again, you really can't blame this on the wind at all. Maybe the wind increased it some, but it's always to the right no matter what direction I'm going. If we were to blame it on the wind, it would have to be something where it would be going in both directions. So it's definitely an issue with mine, and I've done all my calibrations multiple times. It does not change. And I'll go back again and you'll see one more time that it takes a hard right. Now this time I angled more to the left and it still went far to the right. So definitely an issue there in my case. And you can see it here as well. I'm flying straight, but it angles off to the right a little bit. And these aren't great shots. I mean, this is just from the ground. It tells me a lot. From the view here, it really doesn't tell you so much, but I mean, you can clearly see that it did take a dip on one left turn, but all the others it held fine, so that's great. And you can clearly see the crab walk to the right. So yeah, that was something that I wasn't expecting actually, because I did not have it so bad like this before. And before it was to the left. So, and the other issue was the camera itself wouldn't center up. Work that out, but that's not the case here. The camera does seem to be centered up just fine, or the gimbal. So here I'm just hovering. This was me just kind of hovering, and what I was doing was taking and just spinning it. Normally when I would do this, it would look like a toilet bowl. It would take very wide spins and not a nice tight pattern like it's doing now. So this right here doesn't look like much to anybody, but as a test standpoint, if it is able to do this versus give you a toilet bowl, that right there tells you you've got improvement in flight stability. At least it does for me. Because like I said before, when I would do this, it would do a toilet bowl, and if it does it in a tight pattern like that, you're going to see it in your flight as well. So here I'm going to just do some tight circles, and normally I would not have made it more than 2 circles, but as you see I can do several and it's not losing altitude. And only one time right here it loses altitude, right there. That could have been a little bit of a gust of wind or something, but normally, like I said, I wouldn't have made it 2 full turns without losing altitude. So much improvement there. So again, just kind of hovering and feeling the stick sensitivity. I really wish they could improve this controller. Here's the auto takeoff you saw earlier from the Zino camera. Now you're seeing it from my camera. Barely dropped. So that's very good. Hovers very well. And again, keep in mind we did have some wind. So now we're going to be flying off here soon, and you're going to get a shot from my DJI Osmo, and it's going to be hard to follow the quad, but if you're on a large screen, it's easier to see. On your phone or a small device, you're not going to be able to really keep up with it in this next bit. But we're going to take off here now, and you'll see it appear from the top right, and it's going around. So this is all the same flight that you saw from the Zino camera itself. And as you see, they are wider turns. I do some smaller turns. It's hard to follow. Just try to keep your eye on it. You'll see it reappear when you lose it. But it does hold its altitude quite well turning left now, so I'm very happy with that. So normally here, not only would I be losing altitude, but I would have experienced somewhere in this whole flight, I would have experienced 2 or 3 disconnects. Now I never had an issue with it trying to fly away or do anything crazy during a disconnect. It didn't ever return to home or anything like that, but this flight here, the whole time, 4 batteries, I never got one single disconnect. So there's definitely improvement within this firmware. Here's where I have an issue of return to home. I'm usually off between 10 to 15 feet, and here I had to take control to stop it from landing in the snow, and then landed in the driveway myself. And that could have been due to where I was at, next to the car and everything. But here's from the screen just to show you I did have the stick centered, and I'm trying to fly it straight, and it wouldn't do it. You'll also see, if you go back and watch from the beginning of this screen, you'll see how quick the battery depletes as well. When you're in the throttle, the battery is depleting, and overall my whole flight, maybe I got 11 minutes between all flights. If you did an average, it was probably about 11 minutes. So you get into the throttle, you'll see the battery does deplete, and you also can see that I have my stick centered and straight, and it's doing that crab walk to the right. So that's basically all I wanted to show you here in this screenshot. Was the battery, and that I am holding the stick straight and I am calibrated. So alright, that's it, and I'm giving a thumbs up here.